This is Henry Frederick of Headline Surfer, and we're here for the Roundtable. And this week's segment is purely convention. We'll talk about the Republican convention, and then we'll end it with the looking ahead to the Obama convention, or as they call it, the Democratic convention in Charlotte. With me to my right is a special guest today, Dana Doherty Swanson, who was a delegate to the Republican convention, her second one in the last two terms.
And Volusia State Committee woman. Yes,
and to my left is Sally Gillis, Ormond Beach resident and political commentator and blogger of sallygillis.net. And to my left here further is Stan Escudero. He writes the blog The Guidepost, and he's also the Republican Executive Committeeman, Executive Chair for the Republican Party of Volusia County. So with all that introduction said, let's get right down to it. So Dana, tell us about your experience, just an overview of your experience with the convention, how it felt, and the camaraderie and the color of it all.
Well, I think one thing, the convention itself, the excitement was, I think, greater this time around than 4 years ago.
More enthusiastic?
More enthusiastic. And even though on the last night, so tired, when we got there, the energy just invigorated you. And it was like, I can keep going. I can, this night is great. And it was fantastic. And I think we were all just so much enthusiasm, so much excitement. And we were all just, well, like I said, we were just, I guess, wired, the best way I can say it, because it was just, everyone was, we felt so good afterwards.
Well, I know, Sally, you can only stay for the first segment because you have other commitments today, but tell us what was your overall impression. If you have a question for Dana, what would be your overall impression of the convention?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was just great. Having been to Presidency 5 in Orlando in September, you get the feel of it. And of course, Herman Cain was there at that time. And
was that like a local delegation or something?
It's just people that wanted to go, everybody could go. And there were like 5,000 or 6,000 people there. It was very exciting. Ron Paul had all his people. But now we're down from that to the meat of the situation. It is definitely two separate and distinct areas going forward. Obama do nothing and cripple us financially while he does it, or do we get jobs? Do we educate the kids the way they're supposed to be? Do we take care of the people we're supposed to take care of and cut the welfare and cut all this extra spending?
You sound like you're running that.
I am.
Well, tell us your overall impression, though, of did Romney communicate what he had to do? Did he come across as a human?
I think he did. Yeah, he did. His wife spoke so beautifully about him. And all of his friends, when they were telling anecdotes and things about him, were so sincere about talking about his compassion and how he's worked behind the scenes for so long. People don't know it because he is not the kind of guy that just flashes it all over the place.
Well, Stan, we'll get to you in a second, but Sally, I was wondering if you wanted to ask Dana, since she's here, and her expertise about maybe something that was important to you that you wanted to bounce off of her.
Well, I loved the fact that the women governors and the minority people were so very highly represented.
What about the diversity? It seemed this time around you had it almost looked like Democrats and Republicans together, from the stereotypes of if you're white and rich, you're Republican. If you're a minority and you're more rank and file, you're Democrat. That's not the case.
What I'm thinking is that more now, people are realizing that a lot of times people went with the party of their parents, that okay, if you were this demographic, you just went Democrat. And now people are seeing Obama's policies and things like that, and they're realizing, they're hearing the Republican guys and going, I'm not really a Democrat anymore. Just like the one governor that she said about
Susan Martinez,
New Mexico,
that she said, one day the Republican Party wanted to take my husband and I out to lunch, and we thought, oh, well, it'll be free lunch, will be just nice and polite, and by the end of it, they realized, oh, we aren't Democrats, we're Republicans.
Well, before we get to the end of that first segment, Stan, what about the idea of, like the two ladies have said about, Republican, Democrat, the elitist, rank and file? It seems like Obama has a lot of big-time investors, I don't know if you call them investors, but he's got some big money backing him. It's kind of like twisted the other way around. What do you think?
Well, for years, the Democrats have sold the the mistaken idea that the Republican Party is a party of rich old white men. That's simply not true. It hasn't been true for many years, and it's especially not true now. What you saw in this convention was in many ways a changing of the guard. And you saw out there every night, in prime time, at least one Hispanic speaker. You saw a wide range of women in positions of real importance in the Republican Party. You saw a wide range of Hispanics in positions of real importance in the Republican Party, including Marco Rubio, who is a potential presidential candidate in the not-too-distant future.
Well,
and you look at them and you say, well, okay, these are not people whom we have historically associated with the Wall Street fat cats and that kind of thing. But if you look at the contributors, the list of contributors for Barack Obama in his 2008 election, you have people like Blankfein and Jamie Dimon and others who were heads of the great financial institutions of Wall Street and the big banks.
The big banks.
Yes, the large investment banks and so forth, Goldman Sachs and Bank of America and Citibank and what have you, pouring millions and millions of dollars into Obama's election. In part, I think they did that because they thought it was going to be a Democratic year, whoever ran, and they were right about that. But also because they were convinced that whatever he may have said in public, Barack Obama was a man they could deal with.
Well,
a guy from Chicago who came up out of the cesspool of Chicago politics. And
let me ask you this, though. Sticking with that theme, and then we'll end the segment so Sally can go if she's out of time. I'll start with you. Romney, and I've looked at some of the past conventions on YouTube. I went all the way back to 1960 in each one. And I heard a lot of references to the senior Romney, the dad, who ran for president, I think, in 64 and 68, and came in like third or fourth, and he had a few votes at the conventions. But Romney has this image of the top cat, the Monopoly board. Did that get itself removed at this convention, you think?
Oh, I think so very much. And two things did it. I mean, a large part of the convention was meant to humanize both Romney and Ryan, and they did it beautifully. First of all, there was Mrs. Romney's statement, which introduced him as a man of compassion, as a human being, as a husband, as a father, as someone to whom we could all relate on a very personal basis. Sure, he's a successful businessman, but before that, he's all these other things. And the second thing was his charitable services, which he has performed off camera, out of the public eye.
And speaking of that, I'm going to get to Dana.
Because he is that kind of man.
Exactly. Dana, when you and I talked last night on the phone, you were like really impressed about the elderly couple who lost a 14-year-old boy to Hodgkin's disease back in this, I think it was like 1978, 79, late 70s, and how Romney went and helped him with his last will and testament and basically never publicized that. What did that tell you about him? You were there.
Well, it's because Romney, I believe, on his biblical principles, he's never been one to promote his good works. He just did them. And this was not, and people didn't understand, didn't realize how much hands-on this man has been in other people's lives doing good works. And that this really brought it forward, that this man has been ingrained in his entire life, faith-based good works, and he's always been quiet about it because that's what the Bible teaches you.
And that's a good point.
Oh, excellent.
The biblical reference is a very strong Christian Judeo. Sally, before we end this first segment, I'll give you the final word. What else do you have for Dana, or do you want to finish up this discussion about the money part of Romney?
Well, I think the whole convention was excellent. I think all the speakers contributed to the building the puzzle picture of Romney. So there were no doubts in how he felt or how he thought, what his job was. Everything fit together beautifully. And this is a man, they said it at the convention, whose time has come. This is the right person at the right time.
The maturation. I mean, 4 years ago, Stan, he clearly wasn't prepared. I mean, it wasn't his time, but now...
4 years ago, it wasn't any Republican's time. George Bush was unpopular.
Right.
The economy had just collapsed. A saint running for the Republican
closer to 9/11.
could not have won.
Closer to 9/11, obviously, than 4 years later.
Yes. But what's happened now after 4 years is that Barack Obama has been in power for 4 years.
What about the issue of Romney not bringing up a policy, the 5 points? Some people say, well, it's not a State of the Union address.
That's true.
But there have been presidents, Reagan, Kennedy, even Clinton. They were able to get more of that in there to give them something to push forward with.
And,
it.
you know, there's plenty of time for
Well, let me
that.
ask you, do you think Romney could sustain the short lead he might have coming out of this convention?
Oh,
Or do you
easily.
think that the lack of policy would be something that Obama might capitalize on?
Obama doesn't have a policy. I don't know how he could possibly capitalize on the record that he's created after 4 years of wasting money, crippling businesses, cutting our energy supply, letting education go down the tubes. We need a change, and Mr. Romney appears to be the man who can deliver it, and I hope that he does.
Exactly, and I think the purpose of his speech was to give us a taste of his policies, but also to show a little bit more of the personal side of Mitt Romney, because so often Obama wants to demonize him as a evil businessman, and this
The evil rich guy.
rich guy, and this convention was about introducing the person, the family man, and it goes back to like with Ann Romney about you see this couple and to the outside world they look absolutely perfect, and she goes, we're not a fairy tale marriage. Fairy tales do not include breast cancer and multiple sclerosis, and this is something about really personalizing the family, and I love their use of home movies.
Yeah, that was darling.
Because that helped give a more personal touch of the, spontaneous moments in their family over the years.
Well, that concludes our first segment. In segment 2, we're going to talk about cable TV and Mr. Eastwood.
Wonderful.
Thank you.